Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Townley. I'm a youth program associate with the University of Missouri Extension, and today I wanted to share with you guys a little bit about filmmaking basics. So a little bit of background about me. Some of my, I guess you could say, hobbies or talents include photography and videography. So filmmaking is something that I'm pretty passionate about, and I love sharing it with 4-H members. So kind of to give you a little bit of a description of what this lesson is going to be about. This is going to be, its course is titled Before the Lights, Camera, Action, What You Need to Know Before Getting to Work. And so this filmmaking lesson is not going to be showing you like specific skills or special effects or tips about filming. Basically what I wanted to share with you guys, I know that a lot of you are very creative and you have ideas for the kind of things that you want to film. And I want to make sure that you have the tips and all the tools that you need to make sure that those ideas that you have come out the way you want them to in production. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So a question that I have kind of for discussion and to kind of get your mind thinking about film production is, what do we like about movies? And if I were teaching this lesson live in front of, I guess in person, in front of a group of people, this would be where we shout out the answers and kind of discuss what it is we like about movies. So there are 3 different things that we can talk about that we like about movies that make them interesting, that make us like to watch them. And the first thing is interesting shots. So I'm going to give you guys a few examples from iconic movies of some interesting shots and why we like those and why they make the movie more interesting. So this shot is from the 1994 movie, The Shawshank Redemption. And so if you haven't seen this movie before, I guess there's not too much to spoil because again, it's an iconic movie and I guess everyone, even if you haven't seen it, you've probably heard of it. This scene is, well, I guess some background on the plot. Essentially, Shawshank Redemption is a very long movie, but it details some years of the life of Andy Dufresne, who was falsely accused of murder and sentenced to life in prison. The scene that you're seeing on the slide is immediately following his escape from prison. And there is a lot of emotion from just the rain falling down on him as he's experiencing this newfound freedom after years of being in prison. So this scene, and I guess maybe I'm a little biased because this is my favorite movie. This is from the 1994 movie, Forrest Gump. And so what you're seeing here is the emotion of the character Jenny, who we see her as an adult here, but earlier in the movie we see her as a child. And this is the childhood house she grew up in and experienced some hardships there. And so immediately before this scene that you see here, she had come home as an adult and seen this house and thrown some rocks at it and cried and experienced some very strong emotions, and she fell in the dirt. And so this shot that we're seeing here is kind of low on her level, down on the ground where she's laying after experiencing those strong emotions. And so that's what makes this shot very compelling and very interesting. And it helps us kind of experience the emotion with her. Another interesting shot. Now, confession time, I've actually never seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies, but this is a video, this is not an in-person class, so you guys can't really get mad at me. So what makes this an interesting shot is you see this up close over in the corner. The ring is in focus. It's a very small object, but it's very large in this scene. And everything else in the background behind it, the mountains, the people, a lot of larger objects are not in focus. And so kind of the artistry and how they have this shot set up is very compelling and very interesting, and it keeps us watching. The last one I want to show you guys, and you may not have thought necessarily about this because your mind may go toward filming live action or live people, but this is from the 2003 movie Finding Nemo. And this is a very interesting shot because it gives us most of the screen is filled up with the open water above the drop off. And then in the far left corner, you kind of see the edge of the reef and the 4 little fish up there. And it kind of gives you that a real feeling of this drop off is very deep, and it kind of gives you almost like an eerie feeling about it. And it helps you kind of feel what's going on in the movie and maybe experience the movie a little bit deeper and better. So these are some examples of the things that in several classic movies, I guess you could say, several well-known and well-liked movies have interesting shots. So another thing that we like that you may have thought of about movies are compelling characters. So really quickly, take a moment to think about what some of your favorite movie characters are. I'll give you a second. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the most iconic characters from movies, some of the most well-liked, and I even threw in a curveball here for you guys because there are some characters that are very compelling, but not for good reasons, and they make us feel kind of, I guess you could say, negative emotions. So the first one is a very, again, iconic character that even if you haven't seen any of these movies, you know who this is. Now, think to yourself for a minute, what are some reasons that we like Yoda? So whenever I give this presentation in person in front of a group of people, a lot of times, especially the kids, always say we like Yoda because he's cute. Not everyone thinks that. Some people think Yoda is ugly, but a lot of people think he's cute. So that's why we like him. Another answer I get is that he talks funny. He has that iconic backwards way of talking that everyone knows is like the Yoda speech. And then another reason that a lot of people like Yoda is because he is wise. He is the Jedi Master. And so there's a lot of reasons that we like him and why he's an iconic movie character. And he makes the Star Wars movies. They wouldn't be what they are without him, in my opinion. So that's one example of a compelling character. Another character from a classic movie that a lot of people like and identify strongly with is the character E.T. So we like him because, and you're going to notice a theme in a lot of this, is that we share emotions and he makes us feel emotions. So E.T. is an empath who can make Elliot, the boy in the movie, feel what he feels. And his relationship with Elliot is magical. He's gentle and he's sweet, and we root for him throughout the movie. We really want him to succeed and we want him to be able to go home. All right, so here's your curveball. Have you seen this movie? Now, how do these characters make us feel? So this is your curveball. This is the one where, I don't know about you, but whenever I was a kid and my sister and I had watched this movie, every time we watched it, made us just want to, we wanted to beat these guys up. They irritated us. We wanted to be Kevin. We wanted to be the one that was there trapping the house. These guys they get under our skin. We don't like them. They're the bad guys in the movie. And so when we say compelling characters, a compelling character makes you feel emotion, and they kind of carry your heart and your mind into the plot of the movie and keep you hanging on. And that's what makes a movie interesting, and that's what makes us watch it. So, and keep watching it. So these are some compelling characters that maybe give us some negative feelings, but they make the movie interesting and they keep us hanging on. And lastly, these little guys, after the first movie was released, it didn't take them very long at all to be everywhere. And again, kind of like Yoda, whenever I ask this question in front of a live class, a lot of times when I say, why do we like the Minions? How do we feel about them? They say they're cute. They're cute. They're funny. They're little language that is, I think, a hodgepodge of several different real life human Earth languages. It's funny, and we think they're cute, and they make us laugh. And so the Minions, even though they are just that, they're minions, they're not, I guess, a main character. They're there to assist Gru. We like them. We all kind of wish we had one. And so they're a very compelling character because they're just adorable. And they're very likable. And they're always there. They're supportive. They're always there to support Gru, no matter what he does, even when he's evil, even whenever he does good things, all of the above. They're always there. They're very loyal. And lastly, one thing that we really like about movies is a good storyline, because even if a movie has all of the above things that we've mentioned, if there's nothing for us to really follow, if a movie's not going anywhere, then there's not really any reason that we're going to be interested in keeping on watching it. So I wanted to bring back up again the movie The Shawshank Redemption. And if you've seen this movie, you know that is a very, very long movie. I forget the actual play time, but it's a very long movie. But the reason that it's so iconic is it follows several years of the life of the character on the left, Andy Dufresne. And you might recognize the actor on the right. That's Morgan Freeman. He plays another prisoner in the movie that befriends Angie. But basically, over the course of the time he's in prison, it outlines a handful of the lives and characters of some of the other prisoners. And I guess I'll give a few spoilers. Over the course of the time that Andy's there, he becomes a very trustworthy prisoner to the prison administration, like the warden. But he also uncovers some money laundering. And he kind of befriends the warden by being the one that is put in charge of some of this stuff. And that's how he gets to know what's going on. And whenever he escapes, he essentially uncovers all of this. And that's the short version, because again, it's a very long movie. But the storyline is very, even though it's long, it covers a lot. And there's a lot that, I guess a lot of paths that this movie goes down and a lot of things that happen. And so that's what makes this movie very iconic, is the interesting storyline. Again, my favorite movie, Forrest Gump. If you've seen this movie, you know that, well, we talked a little bit about characters. I didn't mention Forrest Gump. The reason that we like him and that this movie kind of stays interesting to us is that Forrest is kind of an underdog. He doesn't start out with necessarily the best circumstances in life, and that kind of makes us want him to win. And so the movie Forrest Gump follows him all the way from his childhood, being disabled both physically and intellectually, being raised by a single mother, to he ends up going to the University of Alabama on a football scholarship, and then he goes in the Army, and then he, this scene you're seeing here, well, he, as you can see on his hat, starts the Bubblegum Shrimp Company, and then he does his run across the country where he starts running and he just doesn't stop. And then, spoiler alert, shut your ears here if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want it to be spoiled. At the end of the movie, he finds out he has a son, Forrest Jr. So, as you can see, there's a lot that goes on throughout the course of this movie, and that's what keeps us watching. Number one, because Forrest starts out with not the best circumstances in life, and we follow him throughout his life, and we continue to hope that he wins. And then all these things happen in his life, from school to the Army to his career, to having a son, and that's what keeps us watching the movie, is that good storyline. Another one, and I won't even begin to get into this one at all because I don't want to spoil it. So if you haven't seen this one, this is a good one for you to watch. But basically, all I'll say for this one is, if you haven't seen it, there is a very large plot twist in the end. And plot twists are always what makes a movie good. Of course, you have to have an interesting storyline all throughout the movie leading up to the plot twist, which The Sixth Sense does. But of course, it has that big plot twist at the end that makes it such a watchable movie over and over again. You don't just watch it once and then not have a desire to watch it again. It's a classic that, of course, it came out in 1999, and it's still a very well-loved movie to this day. Lastly, you may have seen this one, the movie The Notebook. Basically, in short, we love a good love story. And the storyline with this one is, if you've seen the movie, you know they face a lot of obstacles in their relationship. Additionally, and this may be kind of a spoiler if you haven't seen the movie, it goes back and forth from what's considered present day, and the actual present day that the movie is supposed to be set in is where Noah is reading the book to Allie, who has lost her memory, suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, and is in a facility. And the movie, a lot of the movie goes back and forth between that present day and then the flashbacks, which is what the scene is that you see here. And so there is that storyline. We love the storyline, first of all, because they do face these challenges in their relationship, and they go back and forth, and we really just root for them to end up together throughout the movie. That's what we want. And then also that emotion that we feel of Allie not remembering who Noah is. It's really painful for us, but it does make us feel emotion, and that's what keeps us watching this movie and what makes the storyline so good. So now we've kind of talked about what we like about movies, and so maybe you kind of have an idea of what people are, what might attract people to a movie that you're making and some kind of things that you can kind of add as you're thinking about what you want to film, we can talk about the 3 steps in filmmaking: pre-production, production, and post-production. Now, quickly before I get into this slide, I do want to mention that what we just finished talking about with why we like movies, you might have your mind kind of set when it comes to filmmaking on thinking about those types of movies, movies that tell a story and are theatrical, but also as we go throughout this filmmaking lesson, kind of think about the different kind of videos that you might be filming, whether that's for 4-H or if that's for school or kind of whatever that is you might want to film a video for. We could film movies that tell stories like the ones we've talked about. This could also be a PSA or an informational video or kind of like a news or a feature video. So there are different types of videos you might want to be filming, and this lesson will help you with all of those. So as we think about pre-production, in my opinion, this is the most important part of filmmaking, because if you plan well, you get all your ducks in a row, you kind of think through everything that you're going to need and everything you're going to have to do, it's going to make your production go a lot smoother, and you won't have to backtrack as much if there's something you forget or something you have to redo. And so as we think about that, the most important question that you need to ask yourself is, who is your audience? And again, all of those types of videos that you might be making that I listed, this applies to. So you need to be thinking about maybe the age of your audience. Is it more for adults? Is it for children? Is this for anybody? What kind of information are you going to be putting in your video? And I guess that kind of segues into, based on the kind of content that you are putting in your video, say in 4-H, there's a lot of people who are farmers or work in the ag industry. If you're a kid, say, who grew up on a farm and you want to make a video and the content has to do with hogs, is your audience going to be fellow farmers, fellow 4-H members that you are talking to about hogs? And so maybe you're using a little bit more of the industry jargon, or do you want this to be for people who are new to the hog industry, or maybe people who don't farm at all, and so you're going to have to break things down and do things a little bit more simply? So that's another thing to think about. So who's your audience? Who's this video directed for? Who's your target? Location, location, location. So whenever you are filming your video, you're going to have to think about what kind of background you want and where you want to film it. And so if you're wanting to film outside, you're going to have to think about that location that you're going to film. Are you allowed to be there? Is it a public area? Is it somewhere that you could get in trouble if you don't ask permission beforehand? So I would suggest, if it's the kind of place where you're going to need to film, if you need to ask permission, call ahead of time. If there's someone, you need to let them know so you can secure that area and not have other people kind of infringing on your space and getting people in the background if you don't need people in the background. Make sure you secure that space ahead of time so you don't show up and then be met with unexpected circumstances and then get frustrated because you can't film your video or it's not going to go the way you want. I would also suggest scoping it out beforehand. So you notice some of the things that might be in the background of your video or some noise that's nearby. That's another thing, is you are going to have to kind of think about if it is going to be windy or noisy for whatever reason on the day you go there. You might try to scope out a location where the lighting and the shelter from the wind is going to be in your favor. So those are all things to think about when you think about your filming location. And then those same things kind of apply to if you're planning on filming it inside somewhere. You just want to make sure that you have a space secured and you're not going to be in anybody's way, and then there's not going to be anybody in your way. So equipment, there's several different kinds of equipment that you might need if you're filming a video. So of course, the first, and I would say the most important, is your video equipment. So if you don't have a huge budget or a lot of resources, there are incredible things that can be done with cell phones nowadays. A lot of people are filming excellent videos on cell phones. And additionally, there are a lot of equipment or I guess accessories that you could buy to take pictures or videos with your cell phone. There are different mounts and tripods, there are different lenses, and so on and so forth that can help you film high quality videos with your cell phone. I personally choose to use my DSLR. That's my photography camera. It's a Nikon D7200, and it takes photos and videos. And I've done some learning about the settings and how it can take good videos. And so that's another side note that I would write down is it sounds like a very odd suggestion, but I had a professor in college one time tell us to sit down, and if you get a minute, if you're bored, if you are wanting to, I guess, do some learning and bettering yourself with photography or videography, sit down and read your camera's instruction manual. It sounds like very odd, cheesy advice, but that's exactly what I've done to kind of learn the settings on my camera. And that's how I learned how to better video things, was by sitting and reading the different settings on my camera and learning how to use my camera better. So that is another tip that I would give to you, is read your instruction manual and learn more about how your camera works. Next is your audio equipment. So essentially, when we have a device like a camera or a cell phone that takes video, the microphone that comes on the device is what we call the onboard mic. And so a lot of times onboard mics are good, but at the distance that you are oftentimes filming, especially if it's outdoors, if there's wind, if there's anything else, it's not going to pick up the sound of a person talking or whatever it is that you're trying to pick up the audio for. So I would suggest getting an external microphone, and this could be an actual, like what they call a boom mic, which is kind of like the ones you see, the big fuzzy ones in movies, or I would suggest checking out Amazon. I actually have a lapel mic. Those are the ones that clip on your shirt, that for my 4-H office that I use for videoing for 4-H. And I got it off Amazon for $21, and it actually plugs into my iPhone. And so I just plug that in, clip it on whoever is doing the talking, and then you just use your standard audio recording app on your iPhone, and you have a good quality audio recording. And again, that piece of equipment is $21 for each microphone. So there are some pretty amazing things that are being done nowadays for not necessarily professional equipment. Lighting, again, it's probably just easier if you find a place where you have good natural lighting, but you may want to invest in some kind of lighting kit. And what I would also suggest is if you do have a lamp or something that you are using for that lighting, it's always good. Sometimes you may notice in your filming that a lamp or whatever it is you're using kind of makes the person, the subject of your video, whatever it is you're filming, seem very warm and yellowy. So if you have, say, a piece of paper or a white sheet that you can put in front of that light, be careful not to get it too close because light bulbs get hot, kind of diffusing your light using a white screen sometimes helps that light so much be less harsh. And then any special effects equipment, I personally don't deal with a ton of special effects equipment, but you might kind of want to test that out ahead of time and see and make sure you know how that works. And that actually applies to all the equipment that we've talked about. You need to get to know your equipment long before you actually plan on filming whatever it is you actually are filming. Go ahead and take the equipment out and play with it ahead of time so you can actually learn what settings work which ways and test things out so you know exactly what you need and want to do with it. So next is what we're calling the talent, which is the subject of your video. Now, if you're making a video where you're going to need some type of professional talent, you're going to need to make contact with them, keep in contact with them, and kind of touch base and remind them before the day of the video. So for example, and I've picked on Carla before. Some of you, if you're with Missouri 4-H, you may know Carla Deaver. She's a youth specialist with Missouri 4-H. And one of her areas of expertise is dairy cattle. So say, for example, you're wanting to make an informative video or a feature type video, and the subject is dairy cattle. You might want to get someone to speak in your video who has some credibility, who has some knowledge in that subject area. So let's say you want to get Carla to be in your video. You're not going to be able to just set a day, say it's a Monday, and you think to yourself, I want to go and film on Saturday. You're not going to be able to call her the day of or the day before and say, hey, I need you to come here and film this video, because she's a very busy person and we all have our own individual lives, and it's not very considerate to expect someone to drop everything and help you on such short notice. So I would suggest calling this person probably as soon as you kind of have a date for when you're going to be filming, so at least a couple of weeks ahead of time, and try to set up a day with that professional talent that they're going to be able to come and help you, and keep in contact with them. Don't just contact them once and then wait until the day that they're supposed to show up. Keep in contact with them. It's a very courteous and professional thing to do. And lastly, storyboards and scripts. In the folder that was shared with you, you should have a blank storyboard little worksheet that you can storyboard your own movie on. And so scripts, you already know, that is, if you've been in a play before, those are the lines that you have to read. That's the word for word script for that movie or that video that you're filming. Storyboards, especially if you're doing something theatrical, are the physical little boxes that you draw in that kind of lay out pictorially the timeline for your production. So again, that should be provided in the folder that you've been sent, and that's part of your homework, is that I want you to storyboard your own production. All right, so moving on to the second stage, which is production. So let's pick back up with storyboard and script. Once you write your storyboard and write your script, you are allowed to deviate a little bit, as long as, you could still follow the script and still make tiny adjustments as long as it doesn't change your storyline. So again, you can edit, but don't stray too far from the original script. Maybe a suggestion is to interview your talent beforehand in order to build your scripts. So another good idea is that as you're communicating with this professional talent that you're getting for your production, show and tell them what you need them to do. Maybe share that script with them so they kind of have an idea of the direction that your production is going. So, and again, if you're interviewing someone because they have a certain level of credibility or they've experienced something and that's why you're interviewing them for your production, they don't have to follow a script, but again, do kind of tell them the direction and the idea and the feel that you want this production to have. And another thing is, don't be afraid of makeup. If you are the person, if you're going to be in the video, if you're going to be shooting people, don't be afraid of makeup. It's not necessarily in the everyday world when someone's wearing makeup. We think of it as a more feminine thing, or a way that we might try to cover up flaws, or we might try to express ourselves through fun colors. But oftentimes, thinking about that lighting and being on camera, you always look different when you're on camera. So if you're offered makeup, or if you're able to offer your talent makeup, don't be afraid of it. It's not going to make you look girly. It's not going to change the way you look. It's just going to enhance that, maybe some of the defects that you might be facing as a result of being on camera, or some lighting. It's going to make your face look less shiny if you put some powder on. And truthfully, what I tell people a lot of times is, if someone offers you some concealer, if you have maybe a blemish or a pimple on your face and you turn that down, you will not remember, if you watch the video that you were in 5 years from when it was filmed, you're not going to remember being asked to put on makeup, but if you do accept the makeup. But if you turn down that offer for that concealer or that makeup and you notice the blemish on your face, that's something that's going to stick with you for a lot longer time. And so if someone offers you makeup, it's not that they're trying to change your appearance or make you look any more feminine. It's that they're trying to account for some of the, flaws that might happen as a result of the lighting or the camera. So again, with equipment, test it beforehand and always pack extras. I always say overdo it. Whatever you think you need, bring more. So if you think you need 1, bring 2. This goes for things like batteries. I personally have 2 camera batteries and I try to keep both of them charged at all times. Try to remember to charge them the night before I go to film whatever it is I'm going to film. especially if it's going to be a long day of filming. So if you only have one camera battery and you run out, then you're just out of luck. And the same thing goes for things like SD cards. If you run out of storage space and you don't have an extra storage device, you're out of luck. So always remember to pack more than what you think you're going to need. Another thing that people often overlook that's very important is good file management. So how you store your files, personally, I think makes it easier whenever it comes down to the post-production, like the editing and so on and so forth. You need to be able to keep track of which clips are which, so you're not constantly trying to figure out what you filmed. Is this the clip where I did XYZ? Where's the film where I interviewed this person? Where is, and this is on your glossary sheet, where is the B-roll, that footage that I shot of ABC? And B-roll footage, basically, you have the glossary sheet with you, means anything that's not actually the video footage of what's going on in your audio. So here's another homework assignment. Sit down and watch the news, and don't panic too much. I know the news can kind of be boring sometimes. Watch the news and wait for them to put on a story about a certain subject. And as they are putting on the story and maybe they're interviewing somebody, watch the video clips that they're playing along with it. And you'll notice that the video clips that they're playing are not 100% of the person that's talking. Say, for example, if the news channel came to interview someone about a county fair, if they're interviewing, say, a 4-H club leader or a 4-H member or your 4-H staff person, they're not going to have that person be on the screen the entire time. They're going to video clips like of the animals, of kids in the show ring, of fair goers, and so on and so forth. So that's what B-roll is. So back to file management, you want to try to sort your files into folders and name them, so that way you know what video footage is in that file without having to watch it and waste a lot of time trying to figure out what's what. So another way that you can kind of figure out what is, you know, the little black and white checkered things that are clicked at the beginning of each shot that you might see in movies where they say scene 1, shot 1, action. Well, those are there for a reason. That tells the person who is processing the video footage which scene that is. And so you don't have to have one of those necessarily, but it is a good idea to bring a marker board to kind of write what it is that you are doing and film that at the beginning of your shot, because you can always edit that part out. There's also an iPad app for that. So that way, as you are going through and watching and labeling your footage, you can open a video and see, okay, this is interview number 1 with this person. Okay, this is my footage of XYZ. Additionally, it's important to note that video files are large. And so that's why you need A, multiple SD cards when you're filming, and B, whenever you're going to store them on your computer, you probably want an external hard drive, which can be kind of expensive, but it is a good investment because a lot of times the smaller external hard drives start at 1 terabyte, which is quite a lot of information. So USB drives will work for video storage, but you're probably going to need a lot of USB drives because they don't have nearly the storage that you're going to need, because again, video files are very large. Post-production, again, we talked about the importance of file management. You need to manage as you go, because it can get overwhelming if you kind of compile all of your files all at once and then go back and try to process all of them in hindsight, and you don't use good file management. They're going to be wasting a lot of your time with things that you could have done right the first time and then saved your time as you start to edit. And this one you've probably been told before, whether you're doing homework or whatever it is you're doing on the computer, save often, because there's nothing quite as devastating as working for a long time, very hard on a project that you're passionate about, just to have a computer die or the power go out or something crash and all of your hard work is gone. Very discouraging, and that's very hard to come back from. So another thing from a design standpoint is that you want to use consistent editing. Now, whenever I was probably in, I would say junior high, and we started doing things like giving presentations at school where we were using PowerPoint, the fun thing to do was to use as many different transitions and animations and font styles and word arts as possible, because it was very creative, it was very fun, they were fun to watch, you know, the transitions where maybe your one slide spins in and then the next slide, you know, it swipes up and comes in. And then you have an animation where something bounces onto the screen. It's all very fun to watch. However, I would warn you to not switch up your styles of animations or your editing styles, your graphics, or if you have any kind of font or wording. For example, if you're putting someone's name on screen or doing any kind of closed captioning or anything like that where you're using fonts on screen, stick to a certain color palette. You want to pick 2 or 3 different colors for graphics or shapes or credit screens or captions or so on and so forth, and stick to those. And also I would say the same thing about transitions or any kind of, basically any editing style, anything that you're doing while you're editing and putting together your video. Stick to a certain couple of styles and don't switch it up, because it looks more professional if you can be consistent. So the final stages of, once you have gone through, you have filmed everything, you have watched your video and put everything together, and you are effectively done. The first thing you're going to want to do is compress your file. This is known as zipping. You know, it makes a zip file. And you also want to get other people to watch your video and review it and give you constructive criticism. Now, this is important because no matter how good the video is, if you are the one who's been working on it for several hours or several days or more, you are going to be so, immersed or concentrated in that video content. If there is something that needs to be fixed, a mistake, something needs to be edited, you're going to be so close to that project that you're not going to notice it. So it always helps to have someone else get a second set of eyes. And that, that just doesn't just apply to videography, that applies to anything in life. Get another set of eyes, a fresh set of eyes to watch your video. And try not to be too offended if someone is giving you constructive criticism. If there's something that they notice that you might fix that might make it look more professional, try to take that criticism in stride. And I guess I would give you the advice too, that if there is someone who's being extremely critical, or if there's someone who doesn't necessarily have experience with videography, they may not know what they're talking about in a certain subject area, you can kind of take that advice with a grain of salt. But do listen to constructive criticism and try to make your production the best that it can be. So that's the advice I would have for you guys as you look toward making any kind of video, whether you do want to do something cinematic, you want to film your own movie, if you're wanting to film, say, like a demonstration for 4-H, or you want to make an informational video because you're super passionate about, let's say, cake decorating, and you want to film an informational video about cake decorating, or really anything you want to do. Hopefully, these tips that I've given you will help you plan that out really well, so you can get that vision that you have in your brain out into production, and it communicates the message that you want it to send. If you have any questions about filmmaking in 4-H or in general, you can actually, number one, direct any questions to your local extension office, and number two, National 4-H website has a ton of resources on filmmaking, and that's actually, if you got that the folder that I provided to you as a part of the lesson, then that's where those resources came from, was the National 4-H filmmaking website. So those are good places to look. I hope that this helps you guys with your videography skills, and it helps make that videography process less stressful and helps you create some works of art. So thank you so much for watching.